Howdy, BHRCers. You can find every episode of Why People on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever else you get your podcast content. On this Why People episode 10, we have Jess Elmquist, who's the CHRO at Phenom. Jess has a really, really cool story and really amazing perspective on the role. So looking forward to getting into it. Let's go. All right. Hello and welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Why People podcast, a Boston HR Council production. For those first-time listeners, the Boston HR Council is one of the largest HR and people executive communities in the world, with over 1,500 CHRO, Chief People Officers, and VP of HR Council members. I am joined by co-founder of the BHRC and co-host of the Why People podcast, Paul Roberts. Paul, thanks for joining.
Happy to be here, Sean. Good day. Very excited for today's episode. It should be phenomenal.
Thanks, Paul. And I will introduce our guest. We're joined by Jess Elmquist, who is the CHRO and Chief Evangelist of Phenom. Jess, thanks for joining us.
Hey, great to be here. And anything I could do to support the BHRC, I'm ready to do. It is a great group of people.
Awesome, Jess, and we're excited. We know based on some of your guest speaking arrangements with the Boston HR Council in the past that not only do you have a unique kind of journey into the top role, but it's fair to say you have a really unique perspective on the role in and of itself and where it's going. So I guess kind of starting there, and I think you've seen a few of these episodes, or at least I've seen some content around them. We really based the conversation rooted in three different areas, right? We're really interested about folks' background and what kind of got them into the position to seek executive leadership. We then kind of talk about career and what that path looked like. And then we spend the last part of the conversation about what the future holds and maybe some advice for folks just starting the journey. So Jess, we'd love to hear a little bit about you from a background standpoint and feel free to start, wherever it makes sense for you, whether it's childhood or education.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I'm sure as CHROs and aspiring HR leaders and people that are kind of working their careers up inside of the people side of the business, I think the most important thing is that, as an HR leader, having transferable skill sets is really important because most likely you're not going to be at one company. You're going to be able to take that skill and that ability to different places. And that's a really awesome thing. Although I had a long experience at Lifetime or Lifetime Fitness, a Healthy Way of Life company, I was able to actually transition that into a technology company and with Phenom. And so I think the first thing, if I think about my own journey, I'm a systems thinker. So I really believe that, you can't just look at an individual. You have to look at the system that individual is in to be able to understand how to either motivate them or kind of how their story unfolds. And that's certainly the case, I believe, in companies as well. But my first system was my family of origin. And I would say that part of what helped me develop my passion and interest around working with people is I had two older brothers. I had a younger brother. And my younger brother actually really helped shape my whole family because he had a pretty traumatic illness when he was younger. He had brain cancer. And so this is the 1970s, really tough battle. But my brother and I roomed together. His name is Jeremy. And we roomed together for years. And so I would say that going through that process and watching my brother and then also experiencing that as a young brother supporting him, I really learned very early on the idea of empathy, of truly being in with somebody in that process of life and seeing and supporting him, and then watching him walk out into the world with some pretty significant disabilities after surgery and because of the cancer, and watching how the world either reacted or didn't react to him based on how he looked or sometimes how he behaved. And that really started to help me frame in the world that, we are all together and we have to start to dig in a little deeper with people and truly understand what makes them tick. Because my brother was a lion of a person. He passed away at age 47, just a few years ago, after a Herculean battle to battle back, graduate from high school at age 21, worked at a grocery store chain for almost 26 years, was part of the union there, drove his own car, we really overcame some amazing headwinds in his life. So empathy was a piece of that, but the other piece that I learned from my family system and from my brother was this idea of the mindset, right? This positive mindset. You can choose your attitude wherever you go. And as I stated, my brother had some pretty significant challenges in his life. And I'm tall. I'm 6'3". I have a brother who's 6'5". My dad's 6'5". We're all really tall. My brother, because of his illness, he only grew up to 4'11". So he was a pretty short guy. And oftentimes we're like, hey, you okay being short? The rest of the family's tall. And he's like, yeah, don't worry about how I look. I'm 6'5" on the inside, guys. That's how he was. And so mindset was a really important thing too, where I'm saying, if my brother Jerry can overcome these things, that I can have a mindset and people around me can have a mindset that we can overcome. But we don't do that alone. We do that with people around us that believe in us and support us. So I think that probably helped me get into the people side of the business, because I really saw that when people turned and started to have an idea of empathy and care, and they really sat and listened, we could actually overcome almost anything. The other piece I'll say is about my family of origin is I come from a long background of college professors and educators. My dad was a principal of a public high school in Minneapolis for 35 years. And so having an education background where you start to realize that we're lifelong learners, that we should stay nimble, flexible, and open and very curious about life. That was another big mover for me, and ultimately led me to my first career, which was a public school teacher. I taught economics and American history for 6 years before I went into the world of business. And that was an amazing process of learning and leading as a school teacher before I got into leading people inside a business. So there's a little bit of a shape process of how I became who I am, and incredibly thankful for that journey, even in the midst of some of that difficulty of having a brother who was challenged and ultimately losing him. But all of those things are lessons and were amazing in helping shape who I am.
Jess, thanks so much for sharing that, the background, and we've become friends, and I know a lot about you. I didn't know the story about your brother, so I appreciate you sharing. And it's neat, as you were sharing that, I'm kind of writing down on my notes. I mean, it really tracks with kind of the energy that you give off as a person. And I guess to go a little bit further, when I think of Jess Elmquist, right, I think of this kind of this positive energy, a lot of energy, positive, but also kind of like, hey, it's positive, but hey, we've got some work to do. Like it's kind of a leaning forward, momentum wise energy. And I won't speak for Paul, but both being able to relate to your story about your brother, knowing that part of that journey is, hey, you have to get up and go to your treatments. You have to get up and do some rehabilitation things. Is that kind of forward kind of lean? Do you attribute that to the story you shared with us?
Yeah, no, I say that's a really good insight. Yeah, I would say that you wake up after having a brother who had so many challenges and setbacks, right? Both physically and mentally, and you start to look at every day as a gift. You wake up and you say, I am grabbing on to this moment, this 24-hour day, and what can I accomplish inside of the day? And so, yes, I think it is a lean forward, a kind of positive energy. And one of the philosophies I have, and I actually learned it from really studying the Tao Te Ching and Lao Tzu, which is this kind of, Eastern kind of meditative a book. But one of the lessons I learned in there is that if anything is possible, there are no limits. So if you wake up with the art of the possible in your mind, then you start to say, you know what, I might have a barrier, or I might have an obstacle in front of me, or we might have a really complicated thing that we have to unscramble, but we can get through that. We can make it through, and we can figure out what the answer is, or we'll redirect this in another way to be able to actually get down to solution. And I found certainly inside the world of human capital and working with people, because it's not just binary, like a computer or a light switch, you just turn it on or off. People are more complex. When you walk in with the art of the possible, and each day is an opportunity to do something positive and forward thinking, I think it actually sets you and then ultimately your team and strategy up to actually be a winning strategy over time, because a setback isn't a failure. A setback is a learning opportunity to move forward. So I agree with you. I think that is part of the core of who I am. It's not an empty energy around the day, right? It is an energy that is got depth underneath it, and then you utilize that to actually do real work and get real stuff done.
Well, it's awesome, Justin. Again, thanks for sharing, and we can certainly feel it, in your voice. So, kind of based on what you share with us, and I'm sure we could probably have a whole podcast just on this transition from public, from school teacher to corporate America. But tell us a little bit about maybe not so much that transition, but I guess, was there anything leading up to that, right? You shared some personal things relative to your family and your brother, but I guess, was there anything leading up to you being a school teacher where you look back now and you say, oh, geez, well, that tracks with HR and people and the function? Just curious if there was any kind of, early on, red herrings, if you will.
Yeah, no, I certainly, I think I would say it's almost was the training ground, because in a classroom, I had 190 students, I was teaching 5 to 6 hours of classroom a day. You start to learn how to actually, again, you're managing process, you're managing systems, you're managing outcomes. You are a classroom manager. You're actually thinking about how to inspire people to accomplish more than they thought possible. So there was a really significant training ground. So when I said, you know what, I love education, but I want to see if I can actually jump out and do something in business, I found the transferable skill sets from an education background, the formal education that I got at my university as a licensed educator, but also the 6 years in kind of the crucible of teaching high school. And I also, I coached basketball. I was this student, I was a mentee or mentor, and in the mentee mentor program. I also was a certified special education instructor. I also was a family mediator. So I did a lot of mediation for my school district when kids and parents couldn't get together. So all of those things, when I got into the business of business, right, and I walked in, I found those things were so clearly transferable that I made that leap. But I didn't know it until I got there. Like, I was nervous to walk into business because all of a sudden I had new outcomes, and how I was paid and commission and all those types of things were so new. I was a little worried, like, what if I can't? And then I walked in and realized I was actually training for this really my whole career, and then really took off from there and didn't look back. So yes, there were definitely transferable skill sets and things that I realized after the fact that I was able to accomplish because of the experience I had.
Well, that's really cool, Jess. And it's the last question. We're kind of in this early stages, and we'd love to kind of, transition to talk about the actual HR and people career journey. But could you share a little bit about, okay, I'm Jess Elmquist. I'm at the front of a classroom at a teacher's desk. Could you share what that next landing spot was that brought you into corporate America, the business world?
Yep. Yeah. So I ended up actually moving and transitioning into a startup business that was about 5 years old when I started, a company called Lifetime. And just a little tip of the hat to Boston, I helped open the Framingham, the Chestnut Hill, and the Westwood Lifetime back in the day a few years ago in Boston. So I spent a lot of time in Boston doing that business. But way back when I first started, Lifetime was a $19 million company with 5 clubs, health clubs, or we call them healthy way of life destinations today in Minnesota. And I actually started, like a lot of startups, doing 100 things. But ultimately, I landed on the sales and marketing side. So I met the CEO and founder, and he was just trying to grab people. And I asked him, I said, why do you want a teacher to come? And that's kind of the question I think you're asking, Sean, is why do you want a teacher to come to Lifetime? I don't get it. Like, I couldn't see it yet. It took a little while. And he said, no. He said, I want you to understand that everything that you have, no one can teach. Everything you need to learn in business, you can learn here at Lifetime. And so what he saw was, I think, some of that character build of me through my family system as well as my education, that he was like, oh, this guy can do this. I know he can. And so he had a belief in me with the team that I worked with. So I got into sales and marketing on the business to business side of Lifetime, selling corporate contracts for memberships and health and wellness education, and ended up being the vice president of sales and marketing before I transitioned even into the people side of the business. And so, but that was kind of startup mode. And so for the first 5 years of my career, I played a little bit inside of HR. And how I did that is because of my education background, we started Lifetime University. And it was the training mechanism to make sure as we expanded out of Minnesota to Detroit, into Chicago, into Virginia. Those were some of the first states we built in. I went out and I actually then started to teach and train with a few other people the Lifetime Way, the Lifetime Mission, the processes by what made us different, our competitive edge, and our mission about who we were. And so I was able to really very quickly not only find out that I had a lot of skill and then had success on the sales and marketing side, like the actual business bottom line P&L, but I also found, again, that teaching element, that ability to build a teaching methodology and a system really played out well, as we wanted to make sure that the Lifetime Way was happening in every place that we built one of our buildings. So that was the transition in. And then over time, I walked into almost backwards, like a non-traditional way of HR. I started with teaching in the university, took over the university and built the entire L&D program with a team of people. Then I took on talent acquisition, and I did all of the talent acquisition piece, started to build recruiters, find technology, and build a system, because we were hiring, by the time I left Lifetime, we were hiring over 20,000 people a year. And then eventually, with the senior vice president of HR at Lifetime, really took on the responsibility of traditional HR back of the house support around compensation, benefits, and the pieces that are really critical as a foundation to help build. So I did a little bit of a working backwards in the HR, but I think that actually led me to be positioned really well in this world where we are so forward thinking on talent. That's where I started. That's where my expertise is. And I think that's played out really well in a lot of the marketplaces that I help impact today.
That's amazing, Jess. And we'll come back to the piece that I think there's a lot of what you shared that I think is pretty amazing. You know, the note that I had, and again, I didn't know this about you. We've chatted quite a bit. Pretty cool about and I don't know if this person's still the CEO, but the CEO of Lifetime kind of, using some intuition, and some gut, to make that bridge for you or help you make it for yourself. So we'll come back to that a little bit later. But you're a pretty modest guy relative to Lifetime. So do you mind just telling us in helping the audience kind of situate just how big of an operation that is? Because I've been in quite a few rooms where you chat about it and people say, wow, that's rocking and rolling.
Yeah. You almost don't know kind of what you've accomplished with an amazing team until you walk out of it and you go, holy moly, that was something. And to do it at scale, I'll talk about that in just a second, to be able to do it at scale, but predictably every single day, that was the key, right? I told my team often when we'd sit down and talk through our systems and our processes to be able to do what we did, I said, I never thought when I was, playing basketball in high school that consistency was going to be one of my favorite words in the world. Like, I was like, really? But consistency is such a critical part of being able to do something to excellence every single time. And that's what my team and I really helped accomplish. So Lifetime, we had double-digit growth year over year for as many years as I was there. And so when private again with a couple of really strong PE organizations, when public again. So I've had this really great continuation. But I think the big story there is that we wanted to hire the right people at the right time all the time. Like, we never wanted to miss that member experience. And so that was our true north, is making sure that we lived the mission and we had people that could do that every single day, no matter if they were a part-time person doing 15, 20 hours a week, or they were one of our highly paid full-time professionals, certified and licensed to do what they do. And so Lifetime is a large destination, 125, 150,000 square feet. On average, one of our facilities will have 300 to 350 total team members. And we had 31 states, I think 45 major markets, in North America, including Toronto. And we had I think there's 162 locations today. So you start to think about just the total energy there. Plus you were hiring to cafes, medi-spas, swim and aquatics, operations, sales, personal training, Pilates, yoga. I mean, you go down the line, you're talking about hundreds of job descriptions. And again, licensed by state often, or licensed by city, or certified. And so we had to do that en masse, again, like 20,000 people a year. Part of that was just backfilling part-time people that went back to school or, found a full-time role somewhere else. But many of that was just on the front-end growth. We were hiring 4,000 or so new people every single year just to build and fill our new facilities. And then we also had seasonal people. We were hiring somewhere around 9,000 people for the summer season because we have outdoor pools, outdoor bistros, kids camps where parents took their kids and put them in our kids camps all the summer. So we had to hire 9,000 people to start in May and finish up in August, and we wanted them back every single year. How do you keep a process up where you're communicating with them and rehiring them every year? So it was very complicated, and it was a Herculean task, and the expectations were incredibly high. And so you couldn't miss a summer pool season. Like, you couldn't not have lifeguards. Right? You couldn't not open a club when we said to the public we were going to open the club. So we always said the members, they're coming. They're going to end up at our door, and we got to make sure that we're ready. And so we had some pretty rigorous and consistent processes, but also never compromising. Even though we were at scale, it was the right people at the right time. So it was a big job and incredibly fun. I mean, really fun, even in the challenging moments.
Yeah, again, just even those numbers are pretty staggering. And I obviously don't want to tell your story for you, Jess, but I know just that rigor and just that process is somewhat elementary to or somewhat important to kind of where you are now. So do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about kind of that connection from that Herculean effort that you talk about to where Phenom kind of plays in?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think, when I think about those transferable skill sets, right? If we're an aspiring HR leader or executive, being able to learn how to understand and get up on the balcony of your own profession and what you're doing and go, yep, I can apply this here in this business. But how am I going to step away a little bit further to be able to say, what are the systems and the ways of thinking and the structures that I could take anywhere and apply them to any place? That's, I think, an important thing, because I think we can sometimes get stuck that somehow we're like a one-trick pony. I can do it here, but I don't know if I can do it everywhere. So that transferable skill set, I think, is really important. And if I think about the things that are really important for me or for any other executive in today's world, I think about three things as I walk into Phenom. So I was at Lifetime a little over 20 years, helping build that organization, which was an amazing journey. Never thought I'd be anywhere that long, but it just continued to be just an amazing story and opportunity to do some great work. But as I really started to take a look at the second half, and that wasn't as much chronological as it was psychological, thinking about how I could make a larger impact on the world, as well as, again, take that, kind of take my own medicine. Do I have the skills to be able to actually transfer these things to another place? There were really three lessons that I took away. One is, as an HR leader today, I think actually having change management as a key skill set is important. Not only ability to go through change management yourself, like you can actually be nimble and flexible enough to actually move through change, but also being able to actually help shepherd an organization through constant and continuous change. I think it's a critical lesson in today's world, especially as our economies speed up with the power of AI and what's happening there, as well as just the power and the change in generations from a baby boom-led kind of organizations to Gen Z and millennial, and then ultimately younger, Gen Alpha even is on its way coming in. Constant and continuous change is one of our realities. And so having a change management expertise is really important. The other piece is, I think, being able to learn or you have the skill of communicating in a multifaceted and very diverse group. But the diversity bonus is real. But as an HR leader, you need to be able to actually embrace that and truly measure it as you pull teams together and help an organization plan for their future. But the third one is the one that helped me leap what you were asking, Sean, which was as a CHRO, I learned very early on at Lifetime, we cannot do what we're doing fast enough without technology. We'll never be able to hire those 20,000 people at the right time, at the right place, all the time, unless I partner my great team with great technology that allows us to do that. Because what we saw were people were looking for jobs when my recruiters were home, right? It was Saturday night or a Friday afternoon when people were already heading out the door, but I wanted to be able to have a conversation with those people. So as a CHRO, being a partner and an innovator in the world of technology, you cannot delegate it. You have to own it. And that gave me an opportunity to move into Phenom. So Phenom is a SaaS platform. It's an AI-empowered talent platform that helps companies plan from candidate experience all the way to the employment experience across that entire platform. It's an AI-empowered technology that allows your organization to make really thoughtful plans and connect the candidate and the employee with the leaders and the recruiters to be able to have a data-driven, interactive experience that helps people plan their careers long-term. So Phenom was actually one of the products and one of the key leading products that I used and platforms I used at Lifetime for almost 9 years. And as I transitioned, it became very clear that coming in and helping Phenom not only grow, because they're growing incredibly fast, and I've got a lot of that background, but also I am a technology-first CHRO. I believe in it. I think it's important. I felt like Phenom was a place that I could invest some time in, not only as a CHRO, helping support a great HR team internally to grow, but also as that chief evangelist, that odd title that people sometimes cock their head and go, what are you? But really being able to be on, being on a podcast like this, to be able to speak to the future of the world of human capital and HR, but also talking about an enabled organization that uses technology to be able to drive the human capital strategies forward with less effort and more predictability. And that's what Phenom has allowed me to do. And I'm now helping hundreds of companies around the world strategize within that context.
Yeah, thanks for kind of giving us that story, Jess. It's an amazing one. And kind of credit to Phenom for being able to create a technology and a platform that helped with that velocity that you talk about at Lifetime. That's the only word that comes to mind when you talk about it, right? As an operations kind of thinker myself, it's like, man, that's fast. So it's pretty cool that Phenom was able to create something to help you with that, and even cooler that they and you saw the value in it so much that's where you're at, kind of leading the function now. So thanks for kind of giving us that background. And I guess a good spot to go now, Jess, is okay. Now you're at Phenom, right? The layperson looks at Lifetime and Phenom, and those are two dramatically different organizations from maturity, from size, from you name it. Tell us a little bit about what that transition has looked like for you personally. And how your skills and how your thoughts have kind of shaped how you lead the function now.
I think it's been interesting because part of it was being able to, again, be nimble and flexible. And again, that's always a challenge for me. I wake up every day and say, today, be agile, Jess, right? Be flexible. But I think in that context, I would say that the lessons I learned early in Lifetime are applied in today's world at Phenom. And so being able to go backwards to go forwards is a good thing. Take those reference points of fast growth lessons I learned early on, some of the pitfalls that can happen with founder-led businesses, and making sure that people are strategizing and working around it so that you can expand past, just being being kind of founder-centric to being broader than that, where you have new leaders that have the opportunity to run big channels. And that's certainly happening at Phenom. And so I think going backwards to go forwards for me, and taking those lessons learned, but also knowing that they aren't a one-to-one, right? They're lessons learned now. How do I apply them here, and what makes sense and what doesn't? And so I think that's part of it is that you have this wide pool of experience with the years that I've been in the world, working in the world of HR, and then being able to go back that. And the other piece, though, is I'm not alone, right? Really strong thinkers internally, finding them, elevating them, and giving them the voice and the balance to be able to move forward is really important. And then it's the greater outside, like the greater outside reference points, right? Like, for instance, in the BHRC, right? Part of the power of what you guys have built here is we have reference points where we can call and ask for help and insight. That's the other piece I think that I learned very, very quickly is you're not alone. In fact, the most powerful way to lead is actually lead with reference points and collaboration with people around you. And so networks are really important to be a part of. So I think that's really helped me kind of transition into beyond finding my place there. And certainly there have been puts and calls, right? There have been disappointments and successes, but that's all part of the game.
Yeah. And Jess, so that's very helpful, I think, for our audience, even and for me and Paul, is to understand kind of the difference there and that transition. You talked about the chief evangelist role, and I think that's really neat. I've actually been fortunate to be a part of it, in conversation with you relative to some of the CHROs and chief people officers in our, community, and whenever they're thinking about maybe a change or kind of redesigning how they think about what we've talked about today, right? Some of that velocity.
Right.
Can you tell us or maybe talk a little bit about that role relative to when you're chatting with your peers and how you approach it?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. So the chief evangelist role, I love that role. And part of it is that I believe in technology, right? And I already talked about that. That's just been window dressing. That's literally been tried and true dependencies in a marketplace with a business, and you need technology to see that through. So really what I do is I have a lot of conversations with chief human resource officers, CPOs, but I spend a lot of time talking about the power of technology today. And there's really 4 or 5 things. One is speed. The other one is accuracy. The other one is personalization. The other one is automation. And then AI as co-pilot, obviously, since last November. How does HR get elevated? And how do you help the people that are inside your organization stop with the redundant tasks that take up and eat up so much of their time and elevate their work so that they can do really people-focused, purpose-driven activities that make the largest difference? So that's really the whole cornerstone of the evangelist role that I play. And then I get an opportunity, part of my own life mission is to leave people in the world better than I found them. And so I love the idea of being able to go to organizations and help them think forward around their people strategies, because as an evangelist, I have access to literally hundreds of organizations, and I'm having dozens of conversations a month with people talking about what are their priorities, what are they seeing around the corner, what are the trends, what are they seeing are working or not working. And so I can bring that insight to organizations across the globe. So it really resonated with both my own personal mission, right, and purpose of why I'm around, but it also resonated with my professional experience and being able to bring that to bear with other organizations. Almost think about it almost as a consultant and a supporter of CHROs, CEOs that are looking to really set a people-forward strategy around cutting-edge kind of opportunities. Plus, I get to write. I'm on the Forbes HR Council, and I've written several articles for Forbes this year. I'm on the CNBC HR Council. I've had an opportunity to write for Fast Company, and then I have a podcast called Smarter as well. So I'm, again, just helping to elevate leadership and thought leadership inside the world of human capital and the people business.
That's neat, Jess. You have to probably ask the question at some point about when you sleep, but we'll ask that at a different podcast. But so this has been really neat, Jess. We've kind of learned about your background. We've learned about this really amazing career of yours and where you're at now. And in the last kind of few minutes of every episode, we chat about the future or some advice for folks that are maybe earlier on in their careers. But a question I had for you that I think is kind of adjacent to that conversation is, you had mentioned that that the CEO at the time, I'm not sure if the person's still in place at Lifetime, really kind of took a shot on you as far as your background. And one of the really amazing things that have happened to Paul and I through the creation of the Boston HR Council and even this podcast, is we've had a lot of folks reach out to us and said, hey, I'm in XYZ role in ABC industry, but I'd really like to get involved in HR. It really seems like something I'd be great at. I'm passionate about it. But a lot of what we've seen is kind of this heavy candidate marketplace just across the board with all the different ways that you're able to apply to a position and scene and all of these things. So I guess maybe just a question for you, Jess, is and kind of putting you on the spot here is if you're a Jess Elmquist in 2023 sitting in a classroom and you want to make that change, what can you do?
Yeah. So first of all, the founder is still at Lifetime, and I owe a lot of my career to his intuition and giving me an opportunity. And so but I don't think those things are exclusive to, the 1990s and, that one point in time. I think it happens a lot. What we want to do is we want to actually expand that. And I think, again, technology is a piece of this, but we want to expand it past that. I happen to meet a guy, I rubbed elbows, and often it is a guy, right, in today's world. We want to broaden that and break down some of those barriers where people have an opportunity to walk into opportunities that they never had before. So part of the level playing field that I think technology can offer is giving people new and more strategic avenues to do exactly what you were just saying, is how do you get to make a transition like I was able to do? I think the first lesson around human behavior is there's always the all of a sudden. We can all have the motivation or the energy or the vision or the belief that someday I'd like to, but there was a time where I actually had to leave teaching, the only thing that I knew, and make the leap. So there's always the all of a sudden and change. And so know that if you are a young professional looking to make a shift, right, from either whether it's, like I did, education to business, or from one business type to another industry category or vertical, know that there's always going to be an all of a sudden. I think the other piece, though, is I think what I want to state really clearly is the new talent economy is real. There are new values, new expectations, new flexibility, and new visions and dreams that the people entering the workforce today have. So we need to make sure as organizations that we frame up what our company stands for in a way that we've never done it before. Part of what AI is empowering inside of HR, especially advanced HR organizations. We have a customer called Cigna. They're a big, healthcare organization, but they started an internal mobility platform tool with the Phenom platform, and they have well over 60% of their employees have gone in and filled out their own talent cards. And what they're doing is they're attaching skills. So rather than the traditional pedigree, I went to this college, I graduated with this degree, we're now taking skills. And this is the leap that you're talking about. AI-empowered skills takes the skills and allows the data to be elevated so the leader can see the skills, the person can see the skills that the new job needs. And then if you have your great L&D empowered team offering those training mechanisms that people can start to build new badges of skills, you being able to transfer rather than a north-south. Actually, I had someone share this with me last week. This is not north-south. This is east-west career planning, industry to industry, but also job type to job type in organizations. I'll give you an example. We have an organization that's a great customer of ours, Southwest Airlines. They have an internal, they call it a talent marketing manager. That's a marketing person, a specialist in marketing that works in HR on the Phenom platform to make sure that the pipeline and the funnel for Southwest stays vibrant and active for them to be able to hire across their 100 marketplaces. Think of the power of that, though. You're a marketing manager somewhere over on the sales side, and you're going, you know what? I love working with people, but I don't know if I have transferable skills. Inside the system, the skills actually say, did you know that you're a 90% fit for this HR job called talent marketing manager? I never knew that existed. But with technology and with people, again, having a dream, Sean, to your point, of wanting to make a shift, and then with a skills-based world, kind of ontology that connects skills everywhere so that people can see the non-linear ways that they can grow their career, I think the tap has been pulled off that opportunity like never before. So if you're active, you can actually make that same transition that the founder and CEO of Lifetime helped me do as a one-off. We can do that en masse, not only inside organizations, but across industries I think that's certainly kind of the wave of the future. I think that's where people are engaging. So organizations that aren't doing that and are using the old paper method or an Excel database, they're in trouble. And so technology with a great purpose statement of who you are as an organization, with leaders who are transformational in how they're looking at people, giving those people the opportunity to make those moves, I'm telling you, that is a competitive edge like never before.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it, Jess, and I can hear it in your voice, the belief system there. So the last question here for you, Jess, we really appreciated the time and the conversation is, and I'm interested to ask it because you seem, or you're a very kind of futuristic thinker, it seems like, just kind of naturally. So a futuristic thinker like yourself that is performing on the cutting edge in a lot of areas, what are you thinking about for the future? And then, the second part of that question is, do you have any advice for that person that's just starting off in the HR field that aspires to someday be in an executive role like yourself?
I think back to that word consistency, some of these things may not feel overly advanced, but I think they are advanced thinking. I'll go back to one thing I said earlier. As senior executives or leaders inside of HR, don't delegate your technology. Be a partner with your CIO and your technology team, but really understand how technology is going to influence how you're going to be on the cutting edge and on the future of where talent is looking for the right opportunity. So I think that's a future. You'd be amazed on how many CHROs, they just, even based on chronological kind of age, right? I was an immigrant into technology, not a native. I became more of a specialist in technology that I realized I saw the wisdom in doing that because it was the way that I could get my job done, helping inspire people. So that is a real future. That's still a future pushing thing. That's the first thing. The second piece is I believe that the future, especially when we think about the diversity bonus in the sense of we have to start looking at non-traditional ways of putting teams together. And we also know that in the economy where we have still downward pressure on the number of jobs available and the number of candidates that we've traditionally looked to fill those roles, we have to look to non-traditional means to be able to fill roles and to push them forward successfully. So we have to start thinking around skills and using technology to be able to actually move those things forward. I do think that's the future. I think also the new talent economy is real. So I think we got to make sure that as an organization, our main purpose can't just be bottom line profits, although those are really important and they have to be front and center. Those are almost outputs to who you are as an organization, your purpose, your reason for existing, who you are and how you are with your people. That is very important to the new workforce moving into the world. They're not looking for work-life balance. They're looking for work-life harmony. And that is not sacrificing business outcomes for someone's lifestyle, and it's not sacrificing your lifestyle for business outcomes. It's both. And I think if you're an organization that's forward thinking, you can work through that and have an environment and a culture that actually creates so much loyalty with the people that work with you that when you ask for the extra mile, that discretionary effort, they give the mile because it's theirs to give, not because you're asking. When you do that, that flywheel of the futurist kind of mindset around the CHRO, I think really comes into view. And so education, skills, being able to be really kind of open to making sure you're continually working on your diversity bonus inside your organization. And again, going back to that idea of clear communication and being a change manager is going to be really important in the future of HR in leading organizations from a human capital standpoint.
Jess, you're a pretty amazing guy. I mean, I feel like we could chat, hours and hours about some.
Well, thank you.
Things. So we appreciate you, Jess. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Again, thanks both of you for what you're doing. I love the Boston HR Council. It's an awesome group, and happy to always hopefully add a little value to what it is that we're all doing across the country.
Awesome, Jess. We look forward to seeing you soon, pal.
All right, you take care.
Good job, Wes. Thank you.